How did you find forgiveness?
In order to, accept things that had happened in my life, I had to really learn how to love myself more than I hated anything that happened to me. I was responsible for changing the outcome of my life and playing it how I want to play it.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Hey, Lily, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I always love it when local people with impactful stories reach out to me, and even to go as far as to say, part of my healing journey is sharing my story. So it's a bit of an honor that you chose this platform to do that on. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again. And that is one of the main reasons why I did come out here, is to definitely share my story. I feel a little, after doing this, being in recovery and stuff like that, it's a bit selfish of me to keep it to myself. So
Let's not waste any time.
for sure.
So why don't you tell us a bit about what it was like growing up alongside your parents?
Kind of interesting. I just want to start off, like I was a product of an affair. My dad was married when he had gotten with my mother. He had 3 children already at that time. When my mom was pregnant with me, my grandmother had passed away 4 months before I was born. And so my mom was put on bed rest and, stressed out and all that sort of stuff, having to deal with the loss of her mother. And so didn't start off well.
Yeah.
But my father did enter the picture for a little while. He was in our lives at early childhood. However, not physically. He was there financially. But yeah, he was away for work quite a bit. And my mother was kind of left, taking care of us as kids.
Was there a father figure in your life?
It's interesting. Like, my father was there, but he wasn't. He was in and out of our life. My mother used us a lot against him, send me money, or you're not seeing your kids, that sort of thing, right? And right from a young age, I did not feel attachment to either of my parents. My mom was not in, the right state of mind to have an attachment with her children at that time, right? Losing her mother, I feel like there was not enough time for us. I almost felt like a burden, to be honest with you, as a child. We grew up on a trap line with my grandpa, and it was kind of the final time for him. He knew that he was going to get sick, and he wanted to rest at peace on his trap line. And so we went, our trap line is a 2.5-hour boat ride from our hometown, which is Cranberry Portage, Manitoba. My mom's the youngest of 16 kids.
Whoa.
Right? And they were raised on this trap line. Like, they, the 16 of them stayed in a 1-bedroom cabin with, their parents and that sort of thing. I remember being left on the trap line with my grandpa. It was in the winter. My grandpa had gotten sick. And my mom and my cousin were out there with us. They had to go walk across 2 lakes in the winter to get a helicopter to come and get my grandpa, right? And on the journey over there, my mom almost froze. I swear it was like 2 or 3 days that we were out there alone with him. It was kind of our responsibility to make sure that he's safe, that he's comfortable, take care of him. My brother's job was to, keep the fire going, check the snares, things like that. I was 5 years old.
And you remember this?
You know what? It's crazy. I do remember it, and it's probably the only positive experience that I remember in my past. So
is working the trap line with your grandpa.
Right. And that is the time in my life where I feel the best part of my life was between the ages of up to 5 years old.
You were 5 years old on a trap line with your sick grandfather.
Right.
And you and your brother were left for days.
And my sister.
And your sister.
Right.
Were left for days.
Right.
To take care of. Well, I don't imagine there was much choice.
No, there was not.
Yeah.
There was not much choice. I remember my mom coming, talking to us and saying, like, I'm going to be going for a couple days to get help. Like, Grandpa's sick. You guys take care of him. You guys, like, giving us the rules what to do, right? Don't leave. Don't go far. Like, you check the the trap lines, you keep the fire going, cut the wood. So my job was kind of just to take care of my sister and my grandpa and make sure that they were comfortable.
5 years old.
Right.
That's
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Yeah,
What an adventure.
that was the best part of my life as a child.
Was
Right?
there any drinking on the trap line?
No, absolutely not. After my mom losing my grandmother, she still had her dad, right? And I think that's kind of what held her together.
Mm.
But after losing her dad, I think that's when things kind of just went downhill for her.
And in such a dramatic way, I would
Right.
say,
Yeah.
that going on a 2-day trek or however long that took across 2 lakes. I mean, I can't imagine what must have been going through her mind that entire time.
She almost froze, right? It was her and my cousin that went on the journey to get a helicopter, and they had to break into a house, an empty house, and use their phone. Even that was a risk for her, right? Breaking into the house and that sort of thing. But yeah, the helicopter came and got her, and then I do remember the helicopter showing up. I was sitting at the window, and we heard it. We heard the helicopter coming from far, right? And I was like, "Oh my God, mommy's here, right?" And so my brother and my sister came running to the window, and so when we saw the helicopter, we went running out, and I was like, "Grandpa, like mom's here," and Grandpa's on the couch, like he's not well, right? Like, and he's not excited. My mom had gotten out of the helicopter, and we all ran up to hug her and this sort of stuff. And she asked, like, how's Grandpa, right? And we're like, he's been sleeping the whole time. Like, we don't know, right? And they took him to Winnipeg, Manitoba, where he was then pronounced dead. And then we got dropped off in Cranberry Portage. After he got transferred to Winnipeg, my mom kind of hugged me and she's like, Grandpa's gone, right? We're not going to be able to see Grandpa anymore. And I thought, like, what did I do, right? Like, did I not take care of him properly? Did I not, like, that sort of thing? Like, I was just so lost after that. Like, I felt like even though I had my mother, um, I missed my grandpa, right? And I wanted to go back, like, but I didn't understand why I couldn't. I did not understand, like, sickness. I did not understand why my mom had to leave for a couple days. And it took a long time for me to actually really understand what death meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said father figure, when we were talking about that early on, it kind of sounds to me like your grandfather filled that role.
You know what? And I didn't really realize that, right? Until you said that. Maybe that is somebody that I, because after losing him, the family sort of started,
Coming unglued.
yeah, just a little, like, separating. Yeah, there was a lot of separation. The older ones started moving away. There was quite a bit of, a few of them that, went down the wrong path, started drinking quite a bit. My mom was one of them. Obviously, there was anger between the siblings. Who gets Grandpa's house, who gets Grandpa's cabin, who, there was just a lot of that, a lot of fighting and arguing and that separation, and which obviously led to family dysfunction. And,
Now you hadn't really seen drinking before this point in your life.
I've seen it, but not consistently. My grandpa and my mother, like, being on the trap line, obviously there was not much of it, right? But after that is when I started noticing that my mom, leaving more often, leaving us with different people, different family members, coming, and going for days. Between the ages of 5 and 10 years old, it was pretty intense with the drinking. And my mom developed an anger problem, which reflected how she raised us, right? Like, we were beaten as children, like adults, right? And she'd used anything, and the drinking just escalated. I do remember the very first time that, she had given me a licking was with a belt. And the way my mom had talked to us, like, my mom would talk to us like we were adults, like we were like, get in that room, get your pants down, like, get ready for a licking. Like, she would warn us, right? And the lickings that we got were not just like a spank on the bum, like they were like
you're taking a minute.
Right, exactly. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and so it didn't get better. It actually got worse over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, you know, like I said, we were living from place to place to place. You know, obviously my mom now had this alcohol addiction. She now had this anger issue. She was, you know, dating different guys, bringing different guys home, and, you know, strangers that we didn't know. And it just became normalized for us to see that. One of the final times that I gotten beat by my auntie. We were living with my auntie and my mom at the time, and I gotten beat with a leather belt and had a had a hockey stick broken over my head. And um I was put in the basement for the rest of the evening. And I remember my brother keep coming down to check on us, or check on me, sorry. And like, are you okay? You're not gonna hurt yourself? Like, my mom was sending him down to check to make sure that I wasn't going to hurt myself, right?
Hang on a minute. What do you mean hurt yourself?
I was in the state of mind where it's like, I'm going to kill myself, right? Like at 10 years old, I'm going to kill myself. Like, you don't love me. Nobody loves me. Like, I'm tired of getting beat up. Like, I'm tired of, you know, being a burden, right? I'm going to kill myself. So I've threatened that at 10 years old. And so at that point, you know, my mom would send my brother down to come and check in on me.
Now, these thoughts of ending it all, do you remember the first time that you had those thoughts?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
And actually, I hadn't learned about suicide until I had met a friend who was also trying to kill herself, right? And I said, like, I was so curious about it. I wanted to know, like, why, like, how, right? And I would question her these things, and I'm like, man, maybe, you know, maybe I should do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm tired of my mom beating me. I'm tired of, like, just being from place to place to place. And these babysitters and my family members, like, I would hear them talk bad about my mom and talk like you know, like, just talk bad and talk down. And like, again, being a burden, right? Being a burden to these babysitters, being a burden to these family members, being a burden to, you know, my mother when she was hungover. Like, I would get stuck in the room while she slept all day. And, you know, and if we tried to leave, like, we would get beat, right? And now reflecting on it, it's not that I wanted to kill myself. I just wanted the escape.
Just wanted things to be different.
Right. And as a young girl, I just didn't understand, or I didn't know how to, like, get that different, right? Even if I begged for it, pleaded my mom for it, like, there was just no
Mm-hmm.
there was no way I was going to get it at that age. During the school day, I would not sit down. I had welts on my butt that were like it hurt to sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And the teachers, then I was being, you know, bad. I wasn't listening. I was being, you know, and so then I would get a call home, right? And I would get a home because I'm not listening in class, right? And so I would get then another beating at home once I got home, right? As a result of these things that were happening to me at home, I then became, you know, filled with anger, and I then became a bully in school, right? It reflected in school. I started getting suspended, and, you know, and it was just kind of like a
Snowball.
right. Yeah.
And tell us about your first experience drinking.
It was me and my brother's attempt to get my mom to stop drinking, right? And so what we would do is we would steal her beer and we would save it and we would put it into a closet, and then when everybody was passed out, or, you know, that sort of thing, we would start drinking it. And that's kind of how I started my alcohol addiction. At that time, like, when I first drank it, I did not like the taste, but I liked the feeling of not being scared. Right? Like, I was not scared after that. Like, it was just, and anytime that I didn't want to be scared, I wanted to drink.
So if you wanted to keep her sober, why wouldn't you just, like, flush her beer down the toilet? Like, what made you think that you had to drink it?
It was a combination of my brother's idea and mine, right? And so like, we kind of did it together. right? And it
Okay.
was like, if you don't tell on me, I'm not going to tell on you. So let's just,
And you knew it was wrong?
we did. I wouldn't have been in trouble because I was too young. I wouldn't have been in trouble because I was putting myself at risk or putting myself in danger. I would have been in trouble because I was drinking her beer, right? Because I was sneaking behind her back. In 1999, when my mom had beaten me with the hockey stick, like, I'm going to be honest, I went into the principal's office and I showed them my welts, right?
Mhm.
And I said, like, please don't tell my mom. Like, this is why I'm not sitting down. This is why I'm not listening in class. Like, I'm scared. I don't want you to call my mom. Like, I'm very scared. And then like an hour later, there was a lady there to talk to me, and I got sent to a group home. I didn't have no clothes or anything with me. I did not see my mom. I wasn't able to go home, anything like that. Um, I do remember though, when I was in the office talking to her, they kind of opened the door and I seen my siblings, my brother and my sister.
Mhm.
I seen them sitting in the kind of the common area of the office, and I wanted to talk to them, and they didn't let me. They said, no, like, we can't, it's, you can talk to them in a little bit, but not right now. We have to talk to them and ask them some questions and that sort of thing. So I was not, like, I saw them there, but I was not able to talk with them at that time.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, and then they just drove me to this group home, and that's where I was situated.
Did they say you're not going to see your mom again?
No, they didn't tell me that I was not going to see my mom again. They just told me that I was not going to be going home for a while.
And
Yeah.
and how did that make you feel?
It was one of those things where it was like, it sucks, but yes, I'm not going to be able to be with my siblings. But I'm not going to be going home to get beat up today,
Mhm.
And I actually remember saying that to myself, I'm not going to get beat up today. Right. But I also was like, oh my God, where am I going? So there's another like unsafe thing for me. Like, the other girls that were there were now bullying me, right?
Mhm.
And so, but I was able to handle that, right? I was able to handle the bullying and all the stuff that they did to get me into trouble. They wrote things on the mirror with soap and blamed me, and just did things to get me into trouble at the group home.
Mhm.
I do remember running away a couple of times from the group home, and always just getting caught and ending up back there. They'd gotten a hold of my dad, and my dad was working, I believe it was in Russia or somewhere. Anyway, he was out of the country working,
Mhm.
and they had got him to come down and try to get me into his care, right? And so he did that. He came and he moved. Actually, he bought a house in Meth Park, Saskatchewan. So for me, it was like, okay, great. Like, I don't have to be in this group home. Like, I could go to dad's. I could, like, I could still see my siblings. Like, maybe Molly and Ken will come visit. That sort of that. Though that's kind of what was going through my head at that
Mhm.
time. And over time, things got a little better, right? I stopped getting abused by my mother. I felt like, okay, good. Like, this is now a safe place for me. I'm okay here, right?
Mm.
And then it wasn't.
Mhm.
Well, he started sexually abusing me. I honestly don't know if I even understood, like, if that was not normal,
Mhm.
right? Because I've seen my mom in the past with so many different guys and boyfriends, and so
Mhm.
to me it was just, this is something that I needed to do, needed to accept, and it was what it was. I had nowhere else to go, nobody else to turn to. To to me, he was my savior,
Mm.
right? At that time, like, I was getting so brutally beaten by my mom and bullied by everybody in my life.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
right, he was the one who, like, took me out of that place. He brought me to this new home and, like, kept me safe from that. And so, as my savior, I'm going to, do what you want me to do because you're keeping me safe.
How long did it go on for?
It went on for 2 years. The sexual abuse didn't start off as just sexual abuse, right? It started off as like back rubs while he was naked. And, you know, this abuse obviously escalated and continued to escalate. You know, it ended up being, you know, very sexual. I'm scared now, right? Like, I'm fearful. There was threats to go live back with mom or go back to the group home, right? And there was also like gifting, right? Like, I'll buy you a bike. I'll take you here. I'll take you there, right? Right. And I was starting to age at this time too, and starting to learn about, you know, things that, you know, my body. And now I'm scared again. Like, I'm fearful. I don't want to go home. I don't want to be with him. I don't want, you know, so there was just a lot of that fear. I absolutely had no trust at this point. I didn't even trust myself, to be honest with you. Like, because what I thought was once normal was not normal, and what I thought loved me didn't love me. And like, so throughout all of this stuff, losing trust for other people and my family members and my mom and my dad, and, you know, it was like, well, I started questioning my own, you know, worthiness and my own instincts and my own
Values.
intuition and things like that. Yeah. Yeah. From there, I started getting into trouble with the law, right? That was my way out from not having to move with mom again. That was my way out from like living with dad. I didn't know any other place to go other than jail. It was a simple, like, I see a cop, I'm going to smash in this window.
So if you would have went with a domestic problem, they would have sent you to another group home.
Right.
However, if you commit a crime, you'll go to jail.
Right.
And you were cognizant of this.
Right.
How old were you?
I was 12. After 12 years old, there was no more sexual abuse. I made it very clear, like, right? So I used what he did to me.
Yes.
If I wanted to go somewhere, if I wanted to do something, if I wanted, you know, money for drugs, or if I wanted money for alcohol, if I wanted friends to come over, if I wanted whatever I wanted, I would use that as a leverage for, you know, do this or I'm going to tell on you. There was no more sexual abuse. However, when I was living with my mom, we would still fight. She wouldn't beat me the way that she was able to when I was younger. I would fight back, right? And to keep myself safe, because that's what it all came down to. Like, it all came down to the point of, now I have to keep myself safe, because nobody in my life is keeping me safe. Nobody in my family is keeping me safe. And so now I have to do it myself. Now I'm trying to fight her, right? Now the tables have flipped, and now I am so angry from whatever happened to me in my past and all the shit you put me through, all the things you put me through, that now I want to get you back. After being able to stand up for myself, and I remember the very first fight that me and my mom got into, where I stood up for myself, and I gave her a hard time, right? And to me, that was like, good. Like, now you know, right? Now you know I'm not going to put up with the things that you put me through. And now I'm not going to let you beat me. And now I'm like, this is the way that I was thinking at that time. I remember this is the very first time that I actually told somebody about the sexual abuse, when I was 13. And it was my mom. And she had gotten on the phone with my dad. This still angers me today, but I've learned to live with it. But she'd gotten on the phone with my dad, and she asked if I was having an affair with him. I looked at her, but I didn't say anything, right? And in my mind, I'm like, what do you mean an affair? Like, why would I have an affair with my father? This is what I'm thinking, right? And now I just hate you, right? Like, I don't like you. At 15 years old then, that's when I addressed my dad. And I was with my sister and my dad at his house. I was very angry. I'm like, why did you do it? Like, tell me, like, because he had also done it to my sister, right? And I don't want to go too much into her stuff, because I don't know where she's at with her stuff. But she knew what he did to her, and she knew what he did to me. Like, I'd grabbed a knife and I held it up to his throat. That is what I did at 15 years old. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, give me an answer. Give me an answer. Like, I want to know why, like that, you know? And he just looked at me straight in the eyes, and he's like, do it. Like, just do it. I saw fear in his eyes. Like, to me, it was fear. Like, I felt that he was scared. I saw that he was scared. And like, my sister yelling in the back of my, like, back here, like, you're gonna go to jail for life. Like, stop, just don't do it. Like, please. Like, and she's screaming and she's crying and she's trying to pull me off of him. And I'm like, I stopped myself. And I was like, you're so lucky. Like, I told him that, right? Like, count your blessings. That was the second time that I tried to address the situation. And again, there was no response to that at all.
So now you're 15.
Right.
You've been to jail.
Numerous times.
What is jail like for you?
I liked it. I liked going to jail. You know, I had this mentality that I was like, I was strong, right? Nobody was going to mess with me. It was an escape for me in a way, because I wasn't dealing with any of the stuff at home or in, you know, my family situation. It was kind of like, good, I'm out of here, right? But I also didn't like having my freedom taken away, right? I wish I could have the best of both worlds at that time, but I do believe that it was a way to keep myself safe. A lot of these things that were happening oftentimes were a result of, you know, me using substances and then my anger exploding, because that's what type of user I was, right? When I would be under the influence, it all came out. So I went to treatment, and while I was in treatment, I attempted suicide, and I was already unconscious. It was nighttime, and I had gotten a string from my bathing suit and wrapped it around my neck and let myself go on the closet. I don't know what had happened after that, but I do remember waking up in the hospital, right? I was like halfway through my treatment. At this point, I was like, man, I really need, like, I need to do different in my life. Like at 16, this is where I started thinking, like, now I need, like, I want different. I want to get out of jail. I want to stop, you know, being this person. Like, I was so sick of jail. I was so sick of treatment. I was sick of the courts, like the POs, all of this. Like, when I woke up in the hospital that day, I was not worried about like what happened or that I tried to kill myself or, you know, whatever. Like, I didn't worry about any of that. I was more worried about not being able to finish treatment.
What was going on in treatment that just became so unbearable?
I'm going to be honest with you. Like, there was nothing crazy that led up to the attempted suicide while I was in treatment. I was just, you know, thinking to myself, and I'm just like, man, I'm so tired of fighting. When I was in, like, throughout jail, like, nobody came to visit me. Nobody sent me letters. Nobody was there. Nobody was there to support me through any of it. I spent all of those days, all those times alone by myself. Sitting in treatment, I'm thinking, like, what am I even doing? I'm so displaced in life. I have no like life outside of crime, outside of jail, outside of drugs, outside of alcohol, outside of fighting, outside of anger. I have no life. It was the only way that I felt that I could escape. I wanted nothing more but to just die. Yeah.
Sounds like you wanted nothing more than a better life.
Absolutely. But at that time, I didn't know
what that looked like,
what that was, right? I didn't even know how to start, you know, and I thought being in treatment was the start. I thought being in jail for the last however many years was the start of me, you know, having a better life. My outlook on the lifestyle was just so manipulated by the abuse and the things that I've been through that I figured this is actually the end of it for me. My life outside jail was, you know, hanging around with the wrong crowd and things like this, drinking, doing drugs, crime, just wandering the streets, doing whatever I wanted to do. I was not gang affiliated, but I was gang associated, right? So I wasn't down with no gangs, but I hung around gang members, right? And my brother being one of them at the time. Whatever he was doing, I was doing.
Same brother from 10 years old.
Right.
Okay.
Same brother. Yeah. The drinking always continued. When I was younger, I would drink like 2 6s, 40s straight out the bottle. My go-to was the alcohol. And a big part of that is because my dad was an alcoholic as well. And he, like I said, would provide me with anything that I wanted, right? he would buy me these drinks. He would rent me a hotel room to have a party there. He would do anything that I wanted to do. Like, and I would like to touch base on, the last time that I went to jail. So it
Okay.
would have been 17 years old. So I was just about to turn 18 years old. And while I was in there, I'd taken some weed in with me and ended up getting caught with it. And I ended up assaulting three guards and shutting down the whole unit and going on a rage attack. And like I smashed, I ripped the toilet out of the wall and I smashed it up against the shower and I started throwing porcelains at everybody in there and they had to take me down. It was a big thing. Like they had to take me down with a body shield and all this sort of stuff, right? And so it was just kind of like, yeah, it was just a big thing. And I ended up getting, some more time, just like added on my sentence. But when I was leaving there, when I was done my sentence, I was leaving there, and I remember this very clearly, doing the release plan. And I told the guy, I said, my case planner, my caseworker, whatever, I told him, I said, like, it's fine. You don't have to worry about this. Like, I'm not coming back. Right. And he doubted me. He was like, I'll see you back here. Like, I know I will. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told him, I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm not coming back here. Right. Because in my mind, I was again going to kill myself. So that's why I promised him that I wasn't going to be back here. I went and stayed with a friend, and I was staying with this friend for a few months. I'd moved all my furniture and everything into this house, and my sister called me one day and she said, "Why is your stuff all out in the yard?" Right? Essentially what happened was he kicked me out of the house. I was like, man, I have nowhere to go. And I'm like, I'm so tired of life, right? Like I was actually, like, I had created a plan for myself to go and kill myself. I was going to go, I knew when the train was coming, I was going to go jump in front of the train. And in order to do this, I wanted a cigarette. Nobody was giving me a cigarette. And I'm screaming, like I'm crying, full, like broad daylight, just full on bawling, crying, screaming out to the sky that there was no God and God didn't love me. And if there was a God, why is this happening? And just blaming God and blaming everybody in my life that hurt me and blaming the past and all of these different things that was going on in my mind. And like I was just so lonely. This old man pulls up. Yeah, and he gave me a cigarette and he started talking to me and asking me questions. And he was like, "Little miss, you're not from around here, are you?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Where are you from?" Like, "Nowhere." It's like, "Oh, little miss." I was like, "I don't have a home," right? And he goes, "Go back up north." And I thought, like, how did you even know I was from up north? He's like, "Trust me." He's like, "There's life waiting for you up there." He looked at his watch and he said, "Oh, a little miss." After sitting and talking to me for a few minutes and asking me these questions, and he says, he pulled out his cigarettes and gave me 2 more cigarettes. And as he was leaving, he drove off and I started sparking up that smoke. And I thought to myself, what the hell? I'm like, this guy didn't even go, like, he didn't even go in the store. Like, why did he come here? Right? Like, what was he doing here? Like, he had no purpose to come to this store because he didn't go in. He just came, he sat beside me, talked to me a little bit, gave me, a little bit of advice. I didn't tell him I was from the north. This turn of events, even though I was planning to go and do this to myself, that, I honestly feel like he was a savior, like a true savior in my life, because without that conversation, I would have not been here. And, I don't know if he can hear me or what, but I thank him very much for that conversation. I remember calling my dad after that interaction, and I told him, I said, "Get me a bus ticket back to PA. If you don't get me a bus ticket today, you're going to have a call that I'm dead within an hour. And I promise you that." And he's like, "Meet me at the bus station." So I walked to the bus station from the store, and he gets me a one-way bus ticket to Prince Albert. And now at this point, I'm back at my mom's. And then I met my first daughter's dad. We had a ongoing relationship for almost 2 years, and then I got pregnant. And when that happened to me, I was like, I'm pregnant. Like, I'm going to be a mom. Like, I'm finishing my grade 12 now. Like, this is the life that guy was talking about. Like, well, this time in my life was very short-lived, because I had found out that my first baby father, that my oldest daughter's dad, was having an affair on me, and had another girl pregnant. At that time, I was like, just go. I gathered up all his clothes. I didn't even pack them. I just chucked them out the door, and I'm like, I have nothing to say to you, man. Just go. After baby was born, a couple weeks after, I phoned his family. His sister actually answered, and I asked, like, where is he? And you won't see him for a while. I'm like, oh, what happened? Well, he ended up killing the other girl. He ran her over and killed her. And the baby was only 3 weeks old. It brought up this rage for me, right? It really definitely created a sense of like like reassurance, I guess that you can say, reassurance that I couldn't trust anybody, even outside of my family. Like, it just, nobody at that point. I couldn't trust nobody.
What about yourself? Did you think that you put yourself there?
I did. I blamed myself actually for quite a while, right? And I felt so guilty, so ashamed. I'm pregnant with another woman's man.
Well, that's exactly how you were conceived.
Right. I just raised her on my own. I didn't do the best job at it. I still was dealing with this alcohol addiction. I was still using drugs at this time. I ended up getting pregnant again by somebody else, who then denied her. Like, I started, living the same way that my mom was, right? Like, relationship to relationship, that sort of thing. And, like the anger. I never abused my children. So I had my two older ones, and I started as a carny traveling, right? I left my kids with my mom. And while on the carnival, I ended up meeting a friend, not somebody I knew, but I was very high at this time, and I just sat down at somebody's camp, and there was like a bunch of people just like having a good time, just doing their thing, and I just show up and I just sit down, and they're like, "Do we know you?" My friend's husband actually walked me back to my camper because I was so out of it. And then the next morning they'd come back to me and they were like, let's talk, right? Like, who are you? Where are you from? Like, what is your life? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I told this, like, this girl, and, she's like, come live with us. They just pulled me into their life and was like, we will help you. We will take care of you. Let's go get your kids. Let's do this, right? Life got so much better after that, right? After moving in with them, I didn't know them. We were strangers. She took me to go and get both my kids. I was still using drugs and that sort of thing. And then she was the security that I needed. And living with her, I just kept waiting for it, waiting for like that time that, okay,
for the abuse to start.
Yeah,
for the something.
Yeah, for the something, exactly. And it just didn't happen. And, after living with her and learning about her and that sort of stuff, and she said, you know what? She said, I saw me in you. I could tell from the very first moment that I met you that you were hurting. To her, she saw that displacement. So
she was in recovery?
She was in recovery. Yeah. And she was, I think, not married yet, but just getting married. And yeah, it was... Yeah, she had very similar lived experience, and she said, like, somebody helped me in my life, and after talking to her and learning, obviously living with her and stuff like this, like, we've had many conversations about where I came from, where she came from, and things like that, and that's exactly what it came down to, was like, I was told to pay it forward, right? And you showed up at my doorstep. Like, that is basically what happened. And then I met my third daughter's dad. We were together for a few years, and he ended up proposing to me. I said no, right? So my life was good with him. Like we had lived together for I think 2-3 years. We were living together. We had 4 kids that we were raising. And I was at a point in my life where I was trying to get healthy, and I wasn't confident and ready at that time to commit even to my own sobriety or my own,
Wellness,
yeah,
stability.
right. And I felt pressured. If we get into a disagreement about something, how are you going to react to that? How are you going to respond to that? I don't know you that well. I don't know me that well. You know what I mean?
That's the big one.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'm still learning about myself. I cannot commit to this. And the next day I packed up my stuff. I had a garage sale. I sold everything that I possibly could from within that couple of days. And then I moved off. In 2014, so I was, dating one guy and breaking up with him and going with another guy, and but both the same people, just back and forth between the two of them, right? And life really took a turn for the worse again. One of the guys had left me knocked out and behind Sarcan between 2 garbage cans, and stole my vehicle and drove it through Cabela's, and I couldn't go home for a month. And he was just getting released from incarceration, and we had gotten together, and like I told him, like, I want to go out and have a few drinks, sit around the campfire. So he ended up coming with me. He thought I was looking at my friend's boyfriend, and then like we got kicked out of the party, and that's when things escalated. And then I just remember waking up between these 2 garbage cans, and vehicle gone, everything gone, like, and I just walked home. I walked home, and a few hours after this, the police showed up at my house, but I was like passed out, right? Like I was passed out in the and I had no clue what the hell was happening, right? And they asked, like, where's your vehicle, right? And immediately I came into this defensive mode that I have to protect this guy. I'm like looking out my window. I'm like, what? My vehicle's gone, like pretending I don't know what happened, right? And I think that really speaks to, the attachment, the unhealthy attachment that I had to not only him, but like the behaviors. I had the mentality of a fixer, right? Like as you hear my story, each relationship that I had, it's not healthy. It's not, but it, I had that fixing mentality, and I was back at square one, right? And I became addicted to meth. That's when I started using meth. I used it regularly. I used it ongoing. And that was basically my safe place. I found safety in meth addiction, and like I just took it for what it was. Like now I'm addicted. Throughout this time, like my mom had taken my kids, right? And used that addiction against me, and used all the stuff that was going on in my life at that time against me, the guys that I was dating, like all the stuff that was going on in my life. At this point, there's nothing that I can offer them as a mother. I have no fight left in me. I have no fight left in me right now. So do it. Take them.
To me, you said that once before in your story. You said, do it. And you were talking about something that your dad said to you. He looked at you and said, do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it maybe he was tired?
Yeah, those are the same words that
Because
were used to me. And I feel like, the behavior I had in that time, where I felt so exhausted and just down and not.
and you couldn't stop,
Yeah,
just like he couldn't stop.
exactly. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That's just so crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So here we are, addicted to meth, no kids, homeless.
Yes. And I was working as a security guard for, I won't say for who, but I was working as a security guard. During this time, I was working to support my children. I was sending them money, and then B, my habit, right? And I was very, very reliable at work. I was very, very reliable. And, it went on for quite some time before it started showing in my work, right? Like I wouldn't show up to work under the influence, but you could tell I was using the night before. You could tell that I was in a hurry to get out of there to go and, that sort of stuff. You know what? It came to a point where my mom wouldn't let me talk to my kids. She wouldn't let me see them, visit them, nothing like that. There was no contact. I think I went like 6 or 7 months with no contact with my children.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried so hard, and each and every time I tried, I was just blocked, right? Blocked from seeing them, talking to them. And I found comfort in that loneliness, right?
Really?
Yeah. And
An old friend.
yeah. Yeah, I found comfort in that. And I think that's why I went so long. I felt like there was nothing that I could do to get my kids back in my life, to be that mother, that motherly figure to them, to make amends with them and to make amends with my mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept using until one day, I was coming down. I was so sick. I was lonely. I was tired. I phoned my mom's cell phone, and like I let it ring, let it ring, let it ring. Finally, the voicemail came on, and I hung up, and I said, "Frick! Like I want to call back." Right? Called back, and the third ring, I heard hello, like it was my daughter, right?
Mm.
My oldest daughter, and I just like burst out crying, like, oh my god, like, um, it's still I tear up still, but the only thing that she said to me was, "When are you gonna come get us? When are you gonna take care of us?" That just was like, soon, like, that's all I could say was soon, my girl, soon, like,
Mm.
And she's like, "I gotta go. I'm not allowed to answer the phone." Like my mom was not letting her, get in touch with the phone. And so she got scared and was like, "I gotta go." Right. And she
Mm.
hung up on me. I'm like, "Please, my girl, like, don't hang up. Like, just talk to me." Right. And I was begging for her, and she's like, "Please, mom, come get us." I heard the fear in her voice, the same fear that I had felt. This was December 16th, 2023. And I had that phone call with her, and I went into work the next day, checked my tags on the boss's desk, and I said, like, "I'm out of here. I gotta go." And he's like, "What's going on? Like, are you okay? Is everything okay?" And I was like, "I'm struggling and I gotta go." I was like, "I gotta leave the city. I gotta get the hell out of here." It's like, I can't live this lifestyle anymore. And he still had no idea. And I was like, "I'm fighting like with a closet addiction," right? He just said, like, "Do what you gotta do and be back in a month."
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was like, "Really? Like, you're gonna just let me quit on you like this and like take me back, like, that sort of thing?" And then it was just shocking to me. And I just said, "Yeah, like, I gave him my word. I gave him my word that I would be back in a month." And the next day, I drove to Yorkton.
Let's take a break.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, this episode is funded in part by the SK-NEIHR, the Nataway-Hoan, and the Mamo-Aikikiak Research, Training, and Mentorship Networks, which facilitate First Nations and Métis and First Nations health and well-being research, training, and knowledge mobilization throughout Saskatchewan. The SK-NEIHR is grounded in community and led by Métis, First Nations, and allied researchers in partnership with Saskatchewan's 3 universities and many community partners. SK-NEIHR is funded primarily by the Canadian Institute of Health Research. EHN Canada is Canada's leading provider of mental health and addiction services, providing evidence-based and medically assisted care with 1-year wraparound services for those suffering with substance use disorder. To learn more, find their link in the show notes below. Métis Nation Saskatchewan has announced its path for the pursuit of self-government. As an MNS citizen, I am proud to see my government fight to protect my rights. This is our moment. To learn more about treaty and our path to self-government, go to ourmoment.ca. Wellness News, Choice for Healthy Living, is a local resource that works to connect people to health and wellness-related products, services, and expert advice from industry professionals, locally allowing us to connect and engage. Check out wellnessnews.ca or skwellnesshub.ca today to learn more. To make contact or to learn more about today's sponsors, to check out our merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are also in the show notes below. That must have been a moment for you to not only unexpectedly hear your daughter's voice. When you heard that voice, was it happiness? Was it fear? Did a weight come off knowing that you heard it? Like, what did that feel like when you heard that little voice?
A sense of relief. Like, I felt very relieved that, oh my God, I got a hold of her. Oh my God, I hear her. How do I explain to you why I haven't talked to you or why I haven't saw you? And, she's trying to cut me off. I gotta go. And I'm like, please. But hearing her voice was just, it was like, hey, right on. Like, She knows I'm trying now. She knows that I'm trying to get in touch with her. As long as she knows that, like, and that's what I thought getting off the phone with her too. I'm like, at least she knows. I'm heading out to Yorkton now.
Okay.
And my mom doesn't know I'm on my way. She doesn't know I'm on my way, but I call my dad and I told my dad, like, I'm coming, right? They were both living in the same town, just different houses. And so yeah, I laid on my dad's couch for 2 weeks straight. 2 weeks straight. And it was the worst 2 weeks of my life. It was the worst 2 weeks of my life. I thought I was going to die. I went through the withdrawal process and, so anyway, I ended up sleeping on my dad's couch for like 2 weeks straight, cold turkeyed it. I wanted the drugs out of my system. I wanted to do it there so that I can show my kids, like, I'm here doing it. I hated that process, actually. Oh my God, it was just the worst. But, and things weren't good either during that time. Like, it was Christmas time and, like, I had made an attempt to get out of bed and that sort of thing to go and spend some time with my family and, do the family thing. But, it ended up being in a big argument, a big fight with my mom and my sister. And it came down to the point where we were, my mom and my sister were sitting at a table and I was sitting on the couch and my daughter was right in front of me. And she's yelling at me and screaming. They're talking down on me. Your mom's this, your mom's that. Don't listen to her. She doesn't love you. She's not here for you. She's, all of these different things that they're telling her in her head. And I'm sitting there just like shaking my leg because what they want is a reaction from me. Right. And what they're not going to get is a reaction from me. Right. And I'm in a position right now where it's like, I'm coming for my kids, whether you like it or not. Right. Whether you like it or not, I'm here. I'm coming for them. Right. It ended up, getting to the point where I was like, hey, my girl, like, I wasn't talking to my mom. I wasn't talking to my sister, but I said, my girl, like, I can't stay here. I can't be here any longer. I can't, because what's going to happen is not good. And I need to make sure that I get good for you, right? I had to explain this to my 9-year-old daughter. And so I'd left after that. I'd come back to Saskatoon, right? And it was about six months that she was left there, that they were left there during that time. And when it came down to, getting them back and stuff like this, I had heard that my mom was in the city with my oldest daughter. By this time, I'd been sober for a few months now. And I was in the verge of getting my own place back and getting my own place and still had my job, that sort of thing. Right. Yeah. My cousin came up to me and was like, oh, your daughter's in the city. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Like, where? And yeah, at the hospital with your mom. And I drove right down to the hospital and there she was just standing there with my mom. And, my mom was smoking and I was so happy to see her. And she was so scared. She started crying and like freaking out. And she's like, my mom's coming. Like, she was freaking right out. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what did I do? Right. And I was so dumbfounded because I didn't know what was happening, but I was just so excited to see her. But she was so scared to see me. And, like, my mom started yelling, like, get the hell out of here, blah, blah, blah. And there's this big scene at the St. Paul's Hospital. And like, I don't know what's happening, but I know that I'm coming for my kid. So I picked my daughter up, put her over my shoulder. She's freaking out, kicking all this. And my mom's yelling, like, I'm going to call the cops for kidnapping. So I put my daughter in my car and I like locked the door. Go ahead, call the cops. So the cops come. And like, my daughter's freaking out during this time, like during the wait of the police arrival, my daughter's freaking out. My mom's standing over there somewhere and I'm just sitting there with my daughter, letting her scream, letting her cry, whatever. And so she basically, she called the cops. The cops show up. They're like, there's nothing, there's no court order. There's nothing like saying that she can't go with her kid, right? Like, there's nothing. So she is the parent, so technically she can go with her, right? And my daughter had a big decision to make at this time because, like, I'm like, okay, like, you heard the cop, you're allowed to come with me, right? And I'm like, can you talk to my daughter? Like, can you tell her that if she comes with me, she's gonna be okay, that she's safe, that she's, she's allowed, she's not going to get anybody in trouble, like, because this is what my mom had embedded in her brain, right? She wasn't going to see any of us again. Like, she brainwashed her.
Wow, that same that your parents did to you. Same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And, and I knew exactly what she felt. I knew exactly what was said to her. I know exactly the fear and all of it that she was dealing with, right? And I just wanted that cop just to, like, can you just, like, talk to her? Just let her know it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she had a very big decision. I said, like, okay, now that you heard the cop say this, like, you're allowed to come home with mommy. Isn't that what you wanted? Like, but if you don't, like, you can come home with me right now, or you can go back with granny. I have no clothes. I'm like, don't worry about nothing, right? Just make the decision. If you want to go with granny, I will let you go.
Mm-hmm.
I will unlock this door and you can go. Right? Just like, I want to come home. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And we drove off.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, that was my, like, oh my God, I got her back, but I still didn't have my other two. So I phoned her and I said, like, if my kids aren't back within 48 hours, I'm charging you with kidnapping. And my kids were back, like, within 6 hours, I think.
Now, you're a few months in recovery. What were you doing for yourself? Like, did you go to meetings? What did that look like?
Like, I'm not gonna lie, I became a workaholic at that point. I, went into school to upgrade some of my classes. I was working 2 full-time jobs, and I applied for school, which I took the mental health and addictions program through SIIT.
Mm-hmm.
I applied, so that happened in January. I'd come back to work, and then in September, I started school. So throughout those times, I just was a workaholic. It wasn't until after I started school that I really truly started doing the healing, right? And once I started school, I started to learn about, different behavior patterns and different things, and every single thing that we were going through, like all the content that we were going through in school. I'm like, oh my God, this is so relatable. This is me. This is, like, holy, like, this is answers all my questions and all this sort of stuff. It's like, clearly I need some healing. It's clearly I need to do some healing still. Like, I'm not where I need to be right now, right? And so I think that kind of was the basis of my recovery journey, like the beginning of it, because it was like, yes, I had cleaned up before this. Yes, I wanted to stop drugs before this. Yes, all this stuff, but it never actually started happening until I started understanding and realizing what was actually happening with me in my life. Right. And so that's kind of when I started, reaching out for different supports. I started going to NA meetings. I started taking counseling and things like this. Right. And, there was still, even during school, there was a time where I could have got kicked out because, I let my anger overtake me. And, I think one of the things that I've learned throughout, to deal with my anger was the fact that, I couldn't deal with being disrespected. Right. And when I felt disrespected, that's kind of when I was triggered. Right. And so, like, even through school, like, there was a lot of things that I was still dealing with, a lot of behavior patterns, a lot of, characteristics and traits that I was, like, had to really, really put some effort and energy into, really learning about that. And I really, really started to utilize the content that I was learning in school into my everyday life. Along came the self-discovery and self-awareness and things like this that I really had no idea about. I'm always reflecting on, like, how is this, a good thing or a positive experience, or what could I have done differently, or, those sorts of things. So self-discovery and self-awareness really came into my life after I started going to school. Right. And so that's when I started taking the steps to really, really focus on building myself as an individual in a sober lifestyle. Right. And taking those steps, taking the counseling and taking all of that sort of stuff and dealing with my anger and things like that, because quitting the drugs and the alcohol was easy for me. What was hard was still living with the characteristics and the habits that I had grew to establish in my life. Right. So even though I wasn't using drugs at this point in time in my life, I was still not individually like ready for the world, learning about myself, the self-awareness, self-reflection, being able to like be okay, accept things that have happened to me, forgiving myself, forgiving everybody in my life, things like that. Forgiveness was a huge thing for me, and stop being angry for the things that have happened to me and using them as a way to, or for excuses, I should say,
Yeah.
for my behaviors, right? Yeah, so during my school journey, it was crazy. I was able to just really work on myself. Initially, I did it to, work with other people in the community and be an addictions counselor and all this sort of stuff, but not realizing that, a lot of it was going to be my own self-healing, right? And that's kind of where it all started.
So you mentioned some very important words like acceptance and forgiveness, and you said you had to stop being angry. I mean, that sounds nice to say, but what did that look like for you? Like okay, you realize I need to find acceptance.
Right.
Okay, so what did that look like? Oh, I need to find forgiveness. Well, how did you find forgiveness?
Well, okay, let me just start by saying this. I had to, in order to, accept things that had happened in my life, I had to really learn how to love myself more than I hated anything that happened to me. Right? And where do I start with that? Like I said, like learning about myself. Like I really, really had to put in the work and the effort to learn who I was as an individual outside of the abuse, outside of the defense mechanisms, outside of all of that, right? Like I had to build my own identity all over again. And like, how did I feel about certain things? Writing myself a letter. I'd made promises to myself that, I would not allow people to hurt me anymore. I made promises that I would try my best to love myself for who I am, and the things that I'm about to learn, the things that I didn't learn. It was a letter to myself. It was just kind of like a motivational letter that, I was just going to be there for myself. And not allow other people to dictate who I was as a person based on what they know from my past. For example, like when I started sobering up, being in the community of professionals and things like this, people are doing this, people are doing that. And relating my life to that. And, like, I've never been traveling. I've never been to this. I've never done that. But these people have. And it was like, that's okay. Putting that pressure on myself was only keeping myself down here. And for a long time, I actually manipulated my own mind by saying I forgive people. But when things would go wrong, I would still blame that same situation. Right. And so in order to really, truly forgive yourself and others, I think a part of that is acceptance. Like I think those come hand in hand together.
You mean like stopping the blame?
Right.
So when something bad happens, you no longer think it's because my dad or it's because my mom.
Absolutely. Right.
It's because I haven't healed now.
Right. And I think like it's not, oh, well, my dad did this or my mom did this, or, I didn't have this in life or this and that. Like, it's more or less like, how can I, be okay with what was offered to me in life and move forward from that. Right. And a part of that is wanting to be better and healthier. Right. I was responsible for changing the outcome of my life. Right. I was dealt a shitty hand in life, and I'm responsible for turning that hand around. Right. And playing it how I want to play it. And I often question myself, like, what is forgiveness? What is forgiveness? Because I keep saying it, but I don't feel it. Right. And every time like I get emotional or something like that, they say forgive, but how? Like, how do you do that? Right? Like, how do I forgive my dad for doing this? How do I forgive my mom for not being there? How do I, forgive my life and forgive myself and all of these sort of things that happened to me? And it's like, just be okay. Just be okay with, just accept what has happened to you and make the changes that you need for what you want in your life.
So forward movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to forget what happened, because
Mhm.
that is your story. It's what brought you here. It's what made you. It's you know, you are the outcome of your childhood, of what, you know, you were raised to be.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have this idea of who you want to be, it's your responsibility
To get there.
Mm-hmm. and to make those changes, and to change that thought process, and to change that attitude of it's everybody else's fault but my own, right? And I'm only the reason why, you know, these things, you know, I'm the outcome of what happened.
So you have to become the reason why good things happen.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And yeah, that's I truly believe that, right?
Mhm.
And if you can learn to love yourself more than you hated anything that happened to you, I promise you that you will be where you want to be as an individual.
Mm-hmm. And maybe learn to put that resentment, if you can't forgive, at least put it on a shelf
Right.
for a bit,
Right.
you know, for today.
Yeah, for
You know?
today. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my life started getting better, right? Like I'm working in the community, this and that. I'm actually at a point in my life where, you know, I truly want to heal the things that aren't showing. And a lot of that is the sexual abuse, right? And when I say not showing, like I don't speak on it very often. I don't use it as a reason to do certain things, or, you know, like the behaviors and things like that. You can see something has happened in my life, but looking at it, you don't know what. At this point, we were planning to move. I was planning to move back to Yorkton for a practicum placement, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. I was in a situation with my daughter, and I was trying to take her phone away from her, and she was fighting it on me for it. And she's never fought me for the phone before, right? And I was like, what? Like, what's happening, right? And at this point, I'm like 4 years into my recovery. Like, I haven't used in about 4 years, somewhere like that. And I read on there that you know, I have to go live at the same place that I got abused, right? And this is what was on my daughter's phone. She was telling one of her friends, and I'm like, come here, like, you know, like, tell me, like, who did this? Like, what are you talking about, right? And I knew. I don't know, like, it was, I don't know how I knew, but I just knew. When I asked who it was, she goes, Grandpa. I stopped. I closed my eyes and I just stopped, and I felt everything that he had put me through, right? I felt it in my body. I felt my blood rush. I felt like the tingling. I felt like my heartbeat going. Like I felt my face getting flustered. I was like, I can't talk to you about this right now, my girl, but I believe you, and I'm gonna come back to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only words. She's like, I understand, because I've shared my story with her. Like, she knows, right? She knows what has happened to me in my past, and she understood. She's like, I understand, Mom. Are you mad at me? I said, no, absolutely not. And I don't know what happened between the time that I left the house to the time that I was in Clavette, but I was on the road, right? Like, I don't know if I went into like a trauma blackout or what.
Isn't Clavette on the way to Yorkton?
Yeah.
And that was not where your dad is?
Yeah. Right.
Whoa, pump those brakes.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. And I come to and I see like Clavette. I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? Like, what am I doing here? And I like had to really think, like, what just happened, right? Like, how did I even get out here? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God, my kids. Now it like clicked in that like, holy like I was actually on my way out to address this with my father.
Mm.
And I took the next turn. I did a U-turn and I went right back to my kids and I like gave them a big hug and I'm like, tell me all about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I went into this like trauma blackout where it's like I was going to finally do it. I wasn't even crying at this time. I just burst out crying once I turned around and thought about my kids. And I cried all the way to the house. And when I got in, I was just like, I just gave them a big hug and I said, like, we're going to deal with this, right? We're going to deal with this. And so I took them down to the police station the next day and and they all did interviews, and we all did interviews and things like this. And going down to the police station with my daughters was actually quite scary, I'm going to say, because of the unknown. I didn't know, and I didn't know what was going to happen. First of all, okay, I thought like maybe my kids would be taken away from me. Like I'm thinking a little selfish at this time, but it was also scary for my kids because they were also worried like Granny's gonna hate us, Grandpa's gonna, like everybody's gonna hate us. We're gonna break up the family. Like this is a conversation that we're having on the way to the police station. I'm saying, don't worry about it, girls. Don't worry about it. Whatever happens, and it's okay. Because we're here because we're trying to keep you safe, and we're here trying to tell your truth. And Grandpa needs to answer to this. Like, he can't get away with it. And this is a way of you using your voice. This is how you use your voice, my girl. Like, this is how I'm talking to them, right? And they're crying. I'm crying. Like, I'm like, I'm here for you. Don't worry. Like, yeah, like they did take us in one by one and giving us our statements and this and that. And like, even me telling my story to the police, that brought up a lot of emotion for me. I went up to the desk. I told them like, we would like to make this, this type of statement. And the lady gave us a green paper, and she's like, go sit at that table over there and write down everything, and the police will get back to you, right? And so we sit at this table, and and I'm telling my daughter, I'm writing the statement for her. And I'm telling my daughter, tell me what happened after that. Tell me what happened after that. Right. And this is the first time that I'm hearing the details of this. Right. And so I'm telling my daughter, like, tell me what happened. Tell me what happened. And so this guy is on the side, on the other table. He's overhearing us, right, talking and giving this statement, writing it down. And we go and give this lady this statement. We go give her the statement back. And this guy walks right up to where I'm talking to this police, and he's like, here's my card, call me. Right. And I'm thinking, oh my God, right? Like, what the heck? And then he's like, the police officer looks at this guy, and he's looking like a biker guy. Like, he's wearing a black vest, jeans, like, and I was like, oh, like, I didn't know him, but I was like, okay, cool. Put the number in my pocket, and I'm like, I phone him, right? I'm like, what the heck? He's like, I overheard what was, the statement that you were giving. And he's like, just want to offer a little bit of support, right? And I was like, okay. I was like, what kind of support can you provide, right? And he's like, well, I ain't no counselor or psychologist, if you know what I mean. And I was like, oh. I was like, oh yeah, like, no, but in my head, I was like, oh, this is my chance, right? Like, like, I can actually get him dealt with. No, I'm good. We'll deal with this the proper way. Because at that time I was like,
and if that doesn't work, then
yeah. So yeah, it was just crazy that he offered me this, and my daughter was kind of like, what's going on, that sort of thing. But yeah, it was very emotional while she was giving me. She was very scared. She was very.
All three of them were there with you.
The two of them.
Okay.
The two were abused. My youngest wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the two of them were, and they were very scared, very not wanting to be upfront, right? It's hard. It's hard to tell. It's hard to talk about, things like that. We ended up getting the statements through, and then on our way home, like, everybody, I remember my daughter telling me, just thank you. Like, thank you for believing me, and thank you for not giving me in trouble, like, not getting mad at me. I'm like, man, this shouldn't even be happening, like, we were talking, and she goes, I feel like there's a weight lifted off my shoulder. Like, I don't have to hide the truth anymore. Like, it's out there, and people, like, the family knows, and like, I'm not a liar. And like, I just made her very, very, like, sure of herself that she's doing the right thing. And that. And like, I actually thanked her for, for being so strong and being able to like communicate this with me, knowing what has happened to me. And like, even now I still thank her for, you know, coming out with the truth, because without her truth, my truth wouldn't have been out there. I would have took it to the grave after the second time. When I found out about my kids, it was just a different type of thing. Like, it was like, you've crossed the line. Yeah. You know, when I talk about forgiveness, I put it aside and I said, you know, like, I don't want to let this bother me anymore. So I forgive. Like, I don't forgive him for what he did, but I forgive the situation, and I forgive myself for allowing it to happen and feeling ashamed by it. And you know, all of this talk about forgiveness, and it all came back to me. You know what I mean? It all came back to me, and I felt the feelings that I felt when I was 10 years old, and I felt the feelings of not being heard, and I felt all of those feelings, and I just did not want my kids to feel that way. And I just told them, like, I hear you, like, I believe you. I'm not mad at you. And you know, having to go through the court processes, and having to like help them through their trauma while still dealing with my trauma is crazy. And I'm very happy actually that it happened when it did, and that I found out when I did, because I don't know what could have happened if I would have known 5 years earlier or 3 years earlier, or, you know, I just wasn't in that right mind frame at that time to know. And I feel like being, you know, after being in school and going through a little bit of my own healing process, I was able to be there for them, right? In a way that nobody was there for me. I ended up reaching out to a couple of my other family members, and he was going up on 22 different charges for seven of us, and all family members, because he pled not guilty, right? To us, that was just another slap in the face. Like, what the heck, man? Why can't you just do what you got to do for your children and your grandchildren? It's not even about your children anymore. Like, this wasn't brought up because of your children. I've already been shut down twice in my life. I would have took that to the grave if it wasn't for my kids. The creator wasn't letting me. The universe wasn't letting me do that, right? It was like, you have to learn to deal with this trauma through your kids now. And at the same time, you have to help them heal through their trauma, right? You know, the guy pled not guilty for like years. We had to go to prelims. We had to do all these different court dates and things like this. And, you know, eventually, I think like 2 or 3 years later, pleading guilty. And on his sentencing day, he keeled over in a grocery store because he had 4 different forms of cancer. But he played it out right to the last day, right? And he was able to, you know, due to his health, he was able to decide where he was going to die, what time he was going to die, what day, where, all of it, right? And so like for us, it was like he escaped justice through death.
To me, there's a gift in that. Not in that he escaped justice, but that he said, I'm guilty,
Right.
before he left this earth.
Yes.
I'm not going to stand up for this guy. But I hope that at least that brought some healing.
Right. And you know what? I think my sister's on that same sort of mindset, because she was also like, she was there for him throughout the organizing of the, you know, the death and the ceremony and all of that sort of stuff. And I remember her asking me, like, are you coming? And I considered it, right? I considered going. I don't know why, but I was like, no. You know, I was like, I told her yes. And then the day came and I was like, can't do it. You know, can't do it. And, you know, I feel like there's a little bit of anger coming from my sister for that, because she feels like, well, she did have to go through it alone and, you know, be there by his side while he was dying, even after everything that was happening. But she did state, you know, his guilty plea was enough for me.
For her.
Yes. But for me, I haven't got there yet. However, I did go to the funeral service, which just happened here a couple of months ago. We buried his ashes, and I did attend there to that service. And I feel like that's my way of saying, like,
Did you have words for him at that ceremony?
I didn't. No. And I was offered to speak. I didn't feel like it was because I'm the one also that brought up all these charges, that brought it forward and went against my family when I should have stayed quiet, or again, like I'm the one that came up and brought all this forward, right? And so I felt like saying my final goodbyes or saying a final piece at his funeral service was just not, it was not my position. My mom's husband, who had spoke at his funeral, said something crazy, and it just really opened my eyes. And basically what he said was, every mother has a right to bury their child with dignity, right? And and when he spoke about dignity and being able to bury your child with dignity, it was all about my grandmother at that time. At that point, it was like, okay, I'm not here for him. I'm not here to celebrate his life. I'm here to respect her and to allow her to bury her child with dignity, despite anything that happened. And on top of that, I feel like his burial service was a way of me burying, and moving on from my resentment towards him. I don't hate him anymore. He's lived his life. He's served his time. He's served his death sentence. And what more do I need or want from that?
So after all of this, now it's your three daughters and you. Is your mother still in the picture? Is your brother that you spoke of throughout your story, is he still in the picture? Like, what does your family dynamic look like now?
Yeah. My family dynamic now is the best it's ever been in my life. Yeah. And it wasn't, like, things still weren't great with my mom after this. And, there was still a lot of family stuff that was, skeletons in the closet and things like this. And, my mom, me and my mom had gone into a huge argument, and, I ended up cutting off contact with her, my mom, sorry, my mom, my sister, and my stepfather. I cut off contact with them for over a year. But I was still in contact with my brother. And me and my brother, like I said, we've always gotten along, as the most that we could. He's kind of been my best friend throughout life. My sister, after getting back in contact, and it was actually my youngest daughter who got us back in contact, because she kept begging me, like, please, mom, please, like, can I go sleep at Granny's? Can I go? Because my sister has a bunch of kids that, she has 5 kids that they get along. And, like, I really had to, like, consider her feelings in the situation too. And so it was my daughter who kind of initiated the reconnection between me and my family. And I had to take my mom for lunch one day, and I sat her down and I said, you know what? I said that, the reason why, here's the reason why I stopped contact. And, like, I'm not going to allow myself to be treated that way anymore. Like, if you guys can't talk to me respectfully and treat me respectfully, there's no need for you to be in my life. Right. And my mom, she accepted what I had to say to her. She talked, she accepted it. We just moved on from it. Right. And it's been the best it's ever been. It's not like 100% great. Like, it's not the greatest. There's still work to do. Obviously, there's still things to address and things like that. But we're at a state now where we can actually enjoy each other's company rather than forced to be in each other's company, if that makes sense. Yeah, so we're like, me and my sister, we're close. My mom and I are, getting closer. Me and my brother have always been close. We take care of my grandmother, who's 101 years old, and that's my dad's mom. We do what we can with what we have as a family. Yeah.
Is there any insight that stands out across your journey that is the most impactful to you, or you feel might be the most impactful to someone who's going through what you once did? What would that be?
Yeah, I think that creating a foundation for yourself when you feel alone, or when you feel down, and you feel like life's against you and that sort of thing. I feel like that's when it's the most important to really be kind to yourself, and really truly um, you know build on your the things that have happened to you,
Mm,
right? I feel like using those as a catalyst to move forward rather than staying in a place of misery or chaos. Using those experiences, your life experiences, as a way to say, I'm strong because of this, right? Or I have strengths because of this situation, rather than, my weaknesses are because of this,
mm,
right? I feel like defining yourself based on your past, your past does not define you. It,
mm,
it does not define you.
mm,
Um, the things that you work towards and that you put the energy and effort you put into yourself, that's what defines you.
mm.
Hmm.
This has been an honor.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I
No,
appreciate it.
and thank you for the trust. Thanks to you.
Yeah,
Thank you for trusting me with your story. It's been a pleasure. It's been a roller coaster walking through your story with you.
yeah,
And I think we're done. Thanks
yeah,
so much for joining me today.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.